nice free time and not a lot of deadlines. So my favorite thing to do is be creative and make songs. And I'd written a book a few years ago. I published a book this past year about my 5 years driving a cab as a part-time job at night. And it was suggested to me by some other writer guys, hey, why don't you try doing an audiobook? So I did. I made one, and I thought it would take me about 2 weeks, and it took 4 months. And I also wrote a musical score for it, which is like instrumental, kind of abstract, cinematic, movie-sounding music is the best way I could put it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So why did you decide to put this into book form, and why write a book?
Well, it's one of the things I've done a lot. I've pursued writing parallel to playing music. So I've always done it. I'm a published writer, former journalist with some local newspapers here. I've won a couple Louisiana Press Awards. So I've always been interested in writing. I've actually co-written a couple other books, with one of which was an architecture book on sustainable architecture. So It doesn't sound very rock and roll, but you know what? Rock and roll needs to up its IQ now and then. So I'm cool with that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, so far with this book, I know that there's probably some folks you've given review copies to and some advanced copies. What do they have for you as far as feedback?
Not to pat myself on the back, but everybody seems to love the book, especially guys that don't like to read. You know, all you dudes out there that just can't stand books, you're bored to death with them. This is the book for you. It's called CABLOG, Diary of a Cab Driver. Those guys freaking love it. You know, I've had so many women, wives, and stuff come up to me. I bought it for my husband for a Christmas gift, and he read it in 3 days. He never reads anything. So the feedback has been generally good. All the stories, it's nonfiction. It's not exaggerated. It's just all the crazy things that you would imagine that happen in a taxi cab at night, working from 4 in the afternoon to 4 in the morning. And also some of the kind of genuine, authentic, you know, heart breaking moments that also happen. You know, it's just like it's a gumbo mix of the things that happen in life, but it's just a machine gun firing line of all those stories.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So with this book, what do you want readers to take away from your writing of this book?
I'm sorry, the phone cut out a little bit.
No. You're good. You're good. What do you want readers to take away from your writing of this book?
I don't know. I just put it out there and they can get what they want from it, you know. I don't want them to, they can form whatever opinion they like of it, you know. I honestly do this stuff same as the music. It's for my own selfish, creative reasons, almost like therapy. So I don't put any I don't have any expectations for how people react to it. If they react and like it, that's freaking awesome. I love that, but it's not a necessity, and I don't think it should be a necessity with most artists. If you spend so much time kind of gauging how people are going to take it or not, you know, I do love it when they do like it, but if they don't, I try not to get too offended unless they're rude or something like that, you know. And then I can get rude too, but I try not to.
So the thing that I find amazing about this is that you put this book out there and you do an audiobook, and then you've got a musical score for it. I think that's great. Tell me a little bit about that.
About the, what is it again? I'm sorry.
About the musical score. The
musical score.
Yeah, I think that's great.
That actually happened by accident. Like the past year during the pandemic, because things were. I'd already scheduled 2020 off to kind of make a record, which it takes me about a year to do these Brother DEGE records. So for this thing, I finished the record. I had the book published that was already set to go. About halfway through doing the audiobook, I started creating these musical beds that would go underneath the narration, which I was doing. And I found that it was kind of boring with just me reading it by myself, which is kind of typical of most audiobooks. You know, I'm a musician. I like noise. I like a lot of tracks kind of bouncing in and out. So I was like, why don't I make this more like a podcast or an audio movie for your ears, and make it kind of cinematic and more listenable and stuff, like a listening meal, you know what I mean? But it's a 6.5-hour meal. So that's how the musical stuff started coming, because just the tones, it seemed all the music stuff underneath my voice seemed to intensify the tonal quality of whatever I was story I was telling. So and by the end of the audiobook, when I finished, I had 30 to 50 of these things, and I culled it down to probably, I think, 36 tracks and put it into a digital-only album called Only the Dust. And I probably could have chopped off about 5 or 6 more songs, but because it's digital, I can throw it all out there and let people enjoy it for what it is. It's kind of like meditation music for dudes or people that are on the go and don't have time to sit still and meditate. It kind of radiates in the background. So
that's awesome. So Scott Jordan wrote the foreword. Tell me a little bit about this.
Scott Jordan is my former boss and a award-winning writer in his own right, and journalist at the Independent Weekly, which is a newspaper I worked for about 6 years. It's actually the job that I started doing after I quit the cab company. He's the guy that offered me a job because I'd published a few pieces in the newspaper, the weekly newspaper that he edited. And just a good dude, supporter. He was a writer, former writer and editor for Gambit magazine in New Orleans, a few other magazines nationally published. He's written for Billboard. And he plugged my old band a couple times, Santeria, because he liked them, which is cool. And we just stayed friends even after that band broke up, so much so that, that when I needed a job writing, he offered me a position at the newspaper that he worked at, which was fun. That was a nice change of pace from the cab. You see in the book that the cab, by the end of the 5th year, I'm just burnt out. I'm tired of doing it, you know what I mean? So it was a nice change up. And he kindly wrote the foreword for the book and and recorded his audiobook forward as well. So he's in there too.
Amazing.
Good guy.
I think
Super
that this
smart guy.
I think this whole project, the whole process, everything is amazing. What do you think is going to be your legacy? Because you've done so much, my friend.
I do, as I maybe mentioned earlier, I kind of do it for me. I've started writing songs just as a form of cheap therapy because I was so emotionally screwed up, and I don't want to get into that and cry, but I had issues, and I still got them. I still got to work them out. But I started doing songwriting just as a means of making sense of the world in my own little space, not even playing publicly. Eventually, I kind of started debating on whether or not I should do this, maybe go out and play in front of people, which is nerve-wracking. For a sensitive person that's insecure about what he does and stuff.
Yeah.
I started doing that. So to answer your question, I don't know what the hell my legacy is going to be. I'm just going to keep throwing it out there if the inspiration hits. I like being inspired. I still feel inspired. I did the book, the audio book. As long as I'm doing things that are making me interested, I'm going to keep doing it. So I don't know if it'll be the music or the writing. I hope both. But it's all fun. I try to keep the creative energy high. I don't mean to babble too much, but when I make a record,
you're good.
I'm trying to make Dark Side of the Moon every freaking time. I might not succeed. I might be failing miserably, but I'm trying to shoot for a high water mark, and I do that. I don't put any filler on my albums. I'm trying to make something cool that I would enjoy, and hopefully other people are enjoying.
That's awesome.
So I don't know what it'll be. And you know what? It's not for me to decide, honestly. If I think there's something that happens, you jinx your own creative output by speaking too much on who you think you are or how you think it affects people or how important you are, I'm just an eccentric knucklehead from southern Louisiana that likes to do a lot of creative things, and and strangely enough, people are just starting to pay attention to it, even though I've been doing it for 15, 20 years. But it's freaking awesome. So I'm gonna keep doing it as long as I'm inspired, and hopefully that inspires other people.
So with this book, do you have a specific writing style?
I do. I started developing it over the years. It's actually the past 20 years I've been doing this kind of block style writing, I call it. It's a column form where it moves really fast and the sentences are only a few. It almost looks like poetry, but it's not, because I don't want people to go to sleep. The book is actually written in a hybrid form of regular kind of prose, like you open a book and see, and this kind of column style. But the speed with which everything moves is quick, because like a lot of people, I love reading books. I've always been a book reader. I love the classics, the beats, the poetry, the kooks. I love all the outsider stuff. But I also get bored when I read Melville and, other classics. I'm like, I can't believe they're spending 15 minutes talking about the wood grain on this ancient dresser or something. So for me personally, and I think this matches up with a lot of people in this day and age with their attention spans, I like things to move along quickly and not a lot of fancy footwork, but occasionally go off on some kooky tangents that illustrate whatever I'm trying to describe. And so I guess it's speed writing, if I give it a name right now. That's off the top of my head, but it sounds right.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So how did you come up with the title for this book?
For CABLOG, part of the job is you have to keep a composition notebook with you that you take notes with in college or high school, and you have to log all your calls. So I started writing in the margins of, you have to log the pickup, the destination, and the price of the fare. I started making notes on the passengers and interesting stories in the margins, and that kind of contributed to the speed writing thing that I mentioned earlier.
That's awesome.
And then, because there wasn't a lot of room to write in a 1-inch margin on a page, so it would have to be pretty concise. So I do that, and then CABLOG just kind of fell together. It's kind of what I called it from the get-go. I didn't even have to debate about titles. Maybe the subtitle, which is Diary of a Cab Driver, I had to kind of think of. It sounds kind of goofy, and I'm not crazy in love with that part of it. Diary is kind of an antiquated word. It reminds me of like Nancy Drew books from the 1970s or something.
That's awesome.
But that's it, CABLOG. It came out that way. I also do another writing series that I publish online through my band's website and stuff called Road Log, which is same exact writing style, but instead of talking about passengers, I'm talking about musicians in my band when we're on tour and all the kooky stuff that happens. Not so much like when we're on stage if something kooky happens, but it's not necessarily about the gigs. It's about all the kooky, crazy stuff that happens in between the gigs. Breaking down in the middle of nowhere's Arizona between Flagstaff and Phoenix, or it's like I've got 20 years of those kind of stories, and that'll probably be my next book, which will be called Road Log, and maybe one day I'll have a box set of these log books.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. So, who is your target audience for this book?
I don't know. I think it's people that love to. Here's my demographic: people that love to read and people that hate to read. Somewhere in there is my people. It's like there's a cross section of folks in between those two extremes.
That's
and I can
awesome.
tell you just from the people the feedback I get, online or on social media, it goes from 15-year-old kids to 80-year-old guys, and a lot of other people in between, maybe in the 24 to 36-year-old range.
Wow.
But the thing, one of the interesting things I got was when I talked to one of the publisher, they were quite shocked at the fact that I was submitting a book or seeing if they'd be interested in publishing it, it's published by UL Press, which is the university press for the college here. They for the content and the style of the stuff I was writing about, they were shocked about how literate it was. You know what I mean? Like there's a literary kind of element to it that's not necessarily like, I'm not really a cab driver. I'm just a writer and a musician that had to get a part-time job, and that happened to be something I could write about and kill two birds, one stone.
Hey, that works. That works.
It worked for 5 years, and that was enough.
So, what was the hardest part of writing this book? Because from what I can tell, there wasn't much, because you had all your notes and you had everything ready to go.
Yeah, I'll tell you the hardest part was when I finished doing the job, when I quit the job, it was an 800-page book. It was literally, I had a Word file that was 800 pages long. So the hardest part was reading the thing probably 40 times and cutting out everything that didn't age well or everything that was redundant. You know, there was a lot of stories that were the same kind of thing, drunk people puking in the cab or, you know, guys wanting to fight or some ridiculous thing. So there's a lot of redundancy. And then there was some stuff that was maybe interesting, but I didn't have a grip on the content, or I didn't have any interesting observations about the experience. So I cut literally about 500 pages out of it. That was the hard part, making it imaginable length.
That's awesome. That's great.
It worked out. It moves a lot faster. I don't think I could handle reading it again if it was that long, to be honest.
So you being a writer and you being just a really cool individual, do you have any advice for other writers?
Don't do it unless you're possessed to do it. Don't do it unless you're already doing it. You know what I mean? It's not like musician is the same. Unless you're already doing it for your own selfish pursuits, or selfish reasons, like compulsively doing it in the same way some guys like to watch sports on ESPN. That's just something they like to do. If it's not something you're already doing compulsively, then maybe don't do it. But if you're already doing it compulsively, keep pursuing it and, you know, chase that rabbit on down the road, because it's a fun ride. It's not easy being a creative person, I guess they call them now, or an artist. It's tricky, and you got to piss off a lot of people in your family, and you exhaust a lot of good graces of your friends. But if you're driven to do it and you enjoy the process of doing it, I'd highly recommend it, you know, just for your own therapeutic reasons, because it really does help you make sense of your own world.
That's tremendous. That is tremendous. So, what books have influenced your life the most?
I mean, there's a long list, but I could just name some writers off the top of my head. Guys like Gabriel Garcia Marquez, 100 Years of Solitude, Jack Kerouac, Henry Miller, Charles Bukowski, Norman Mailer, Anais Nin. Just a lot of kind of the outsider, I don't know, I guess you would be alternative literature, you know, kind of the people that lived kind of somewhat adventurous lives. Hunter S. Thompson, another one. There's a lot of those out there, a lot of the beatnik writers. Just, I don't know what it is, just something about it appealed to me. I also like a lot of the classics and stuff too, but definitely that was my punk rock literature, you know.
That's great. That's great. So, with you putting this book together and you doing it as quick as you did you learn anything, or was it just kind of an easy deal?
Sorry. The phone cut out real quick. Ask me that one again.
Did you learn anything putting this book together, or since you had it pretty much already pre-written, did you not really learn anything?
Well, I did. Well, throughout the, you know, throughout the course of doing the job, you know, I thought I would learn more about people, and I did learn a lot about people, but I also learned, honestly, that's a pretty good question, by the way. I learned a lot about myself, and the thing I learned about myself was, I thought I was more tolerant of a person, you know what I mean? Like, I thought I'd be able to handle a lot of these situations a lot better and not get, I guess, what they call triggered or pissed off or violent sometimes. You know, I got in a few fights throughout the course of the book. So those situations aren't things that I'm into. I'm not like a guy that likes to get in violent situations, but at all. Like, I'm a lover, not a fighter. But I ended up, you know, in those situations and kind of like learning, just like anybody, with each experience, you're going to observe yourself reacting in that environment and to the stimuli that are prodding you, whatever it is. And you sometimes find that you're not the person you thought you were, you know? So I just learned a lot more about myself and the things maybe I needed to work on, you know, with dealing with people and stuff like that, you know? It's tricky. There's a quote in the book about how I think near the end of the book, I'm kind of frustrated with my own kind of reaction to certain situations in the cab. You know, it's a lot of poor people and stuff like that, and situations. And I'm not rich either, but I kind of say something along the lines of, you know, it seems to be a lot easier to be a Buddha on the mountain than it is a saint in the streets.
That's awesome. Well, you have been fantastic. This has been an amazing interview. Thank you for doing this, brother.
No, thank you. I really appreciate people giving it some kind of attention, you know. So, I mean, much thanks.
Before we let you go, how do people get the book and get involved with everything you're doing online?
Okay. Easiest way to do that is go to brotherdege.net. I had a brotherdege.com. I don't know what the hell happened to it. So brotherdege.net is out there.
Awesome.
That's my command central. So you go there and you can get the book. You can get records. It'll have links to the Only the Dust audio score for the book and the audio book and stuff like that. It's not hard to find. Just Google Brother DEGE or DEGE LEGG and come visit me, you know, out there in the internet space land.
That's awesome. Well, I am going to try like crazy, if I can work this out somehow, to come to your Colorado Pikes Peak performance.
Please do, brother. I'll get you in, man. You could be on the guest list.
And because one of my good friends, Ross Long, who's a videographer in Colorado, you would be like the perfect interview for him. So I am going to see what I can do about coming to this thing and see if we can do an interview with you at this event, because I think it would be fantastic.
If you guys come, this is my cell phone, and my email's on my website. Just email me beforehand, and I can get you on the guest list, because honestly, we don't know a huge amount of people in Colorado, so I'm sure they're going to make us a few people to get in, so we can get you into
That's
the whole
awesome.
thing, you know?
That's awesome. Well, I will be in touch with all of your people and you, and we will make something happen. I appreciate it, brother. Thanks for doing this.
Man, thank you so much. I'm about to jump into band practice here. My guys are waiting for me. So, yeah, stay in touch with me and send me a link when or whatever.
Yes, I will send you all
your stuff too.
I will send you all the information, my friend. I appreciate it. Thanks for doing this.
You too, brother.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. There he goes. And there we go.